I don't know. Ayy Gang has a very unconventional Annihilate comp.
Yeah. You know what? I'm curious to see how this will go.
But
It doesn't look like it's gonna be boring because they're already
but, like,
throwing hands. Hype this up. Bannerman is looking really low here. We have a
here comes the
Spring
leg
coming in as
day.
well.
It's the leg day getting so much value in this bunker comp.
Yeah, right?
Here comes,
Another leg day
comes
coming
the-
in from Ayy
here comes
Gang.
the other
Let's
leg
go.
day.
I'm gonna tweet.
You know what?
Here
This
comes
is
the
close
Divine
enough.
Resurrection.
Welcome back,
This is
SFT
overall
Annie,
guide.
I guess. Okay, so let me actually set the stage of what's even happening here. On May 25th, 2025, two up-and-coming teams in the form of Cat Cannon and Ayy Gang were set to fight against each other after successfully making it through the first stage of qualifiers during the Crossroads Central Seal Survival tournament. This seemed like a pretty fun match to watch, as Ayy Gang seemed like a pretty good team and Cat Cannon in their first stage of qualifiers was on a crazy upset run. So it seems like this game was going to be down to the wire, or at least pretty fun to watch. Cat Cannon took the first two games with their smart ult usage coming in clutch to take the games, so it was looking pretty good for them and one more win allowed them to move on in the bracket. However, looking at the maps picked, Game 3 was Ayy Gang's second pick, and surprisingly, it was Banland Annihilate. Most teams don't opt to go for Annihilate, but for Ayy Gang to pick the range Annihilate map of Banland makes a lot of sense, as they have one of the best Hyper Laser players and a great skateboard player who both excel on this map, so it does make sense. The game plan, however, was a different story. Ayy Gang had an unusual pick of characters. It seemed like an aggressive team involving Banhammer and Skateboard, with Hyper Laser and Slingshot's range threats, so maybe they were playing hyper aggressive. Meanwhile, Cat Cannon had a very standard comp, kinda just stacking dives and range with a medkit because medkit is just medkit. The game starts off somewhat normal. Ayy Gang gets fairly low and is forced to back up from the center. This puts them at a natural disadvantage if they try to push, since pushing, especially with a fighter like Banhammer, is going to be very difficult for them when Sling and Scythe could constantly poke them from afar, and Skate and Bio have the firepower to burst the other players down. Even though Ayy Gang has range pokes, they really need to win this, so they play this in the most optimal way they could, which is by staying in their spawn for most of the game. Yep, the thing is, Banland spawns are incredibly spacious, having tons of room and even roofs to go under to avoid ranged chip damage. This means the best ways Cat can catch the chip damage with Skateboard and maybe Slingshot, as every other way is incredibly risky or can get caught up by Hyper Laser and Slingshot. So by staying in spawn, Ayy Gang was actually doing the necessary move, especially since trying to dive with a combat volume Banhammer is fairly difficult with what they have. Not only that, Hyper Laser could just safely chip from afar, so that's also great to have. Their only real way to break through Cat Cannon is by using their ults to retake the center of the map. They obviously can't really do that by poking, so they waited and spawned for a bit while sometimes poking in for some chip damage, and then they finally did a rush in. 3 minutes into the match, Hyper Laser gets a kill trait with the Skateboard thanks to the ult, and Cat Cannon would be forced back now, if it weren't for the fact Cat Cannon had a medkit ulting right after, which then forced the fight to Cat Cannon's favor, forcing Ayy Gang back again, which restarts the entire cycle we had for the entire match of Ayy Gang practically doing nothing until they have ults again. Holy! 20 seconds after overtime started, Ayy Gang goes for another push onto the center. Since the medkit on Cat Cannon used their ult before this rush, this was a prime opportunity to go in. While a lot does happen, Hyper Laser was able to get a double kill with his ult, allowing Ayy Gang to be up by 3 kills in overtime. Oh, and they got forced out of center again, yeah. And after Ayy Gang sitting on their side of spawn for most of the game, Sling picks off Skateboard with the coil ult securing one last kill rushing in, Ayy Gang won Game 3 with a score of 22-20 after 5 minutes and 29 seconds. The reason why this game was absolutely terrible to watch for most people is because even though the scores were close, most of this match was just watching Ayy Gang bunker down and spawn. And since Ayy Gang had a coil, they could heal off most of the chip damage from Skateboard and force Cat Cannon to come to them instead of Ayy Gang trying to force their way in. I mean, look, they were down 2 points, so I kinda get it, but at the same time, holy crap, this was boring. This was also probably the longest Annihilate match in a tournament as well, which is pretty hilarious to think about. The only other Annihilate matches that come to mind that were close were also played with bunkering in mind, but lasted slightly less time. Radzone vs Nightmare in Game 1 Bandland Annihilate of Grand Finals in CRC Rival Revolt, yes, Grand Finals, lasted 4 minutes and 55 seconds, and Nightmare vs 7 Seas Game 4 on Dark Cage Cliffs Annihilate. What are these maps, man? In winner's side of CRC Rival Revolt lasted 5 minutes and 18 seconds, where this match lasted 5 minutes and 29 seconds. Surprisingly longer than that one SFT Annihilate match I talked about that one time, which lasted 5 minutes and 20 seconds. Yes, it's longer than that. The worst part is, Ayy Gang didn't even win the scrim. They immediately lost Game 4, which allowed Cat Cannon to win 3-1 in the end. So the entire bunker strategy didn't even pay off, which makes this game even more hilarious to think about. This game is quite possibly the most infamous Anni match in recent memory that is actually memorable due to how stagnant and boring it feels. To the point where this match completely slowed down the entire pace of the scrim and felt way longer than it actually was. At least it wasn't as terrible to watch as Nightmare vs 7 Seas in general. Good lord, that scrim was horrible to watch. Oh my god.
Yep, they're playing the game.
And ban him from the aura.
This really has a problem. Why would you one-trick Katana? Also, why am I talking? I one-trick Boombox. On mobile.
Yeah, Bush, the banner
Oh,
goes
Ban is
down.
really low though. Ban is gonna get picked off right before OT. Okay,
down.
smart decision to die right before OT.
Here comes the Viner Resurrection.
It's 6-6 overtime.
In OT, by the way.
Yeah, it is
The
the
third
first.
game. No, that was the third game. This is this.
What do you mean?
Like,